when you watch all these sort of, all this movement, what do you think they're trying to do? How do they want to try and get you out of here?
I think it's a mess. I don't think that they have. I think there's so many different parties with different interests. It's a mess. The UK wants it to go away but doesn't want to lose prestige in relation to Ecuador. Situation in Sweden is getting so bad now. The Sweden will never offend the US. Neither the UK or Sweden will ever offend the US. But within that, the situation is so bad now in Sweden.
What do you mean so bad?
Politically, it's the head of the Swedish Supreme Court came out and said that the case is a mess.
Have you had any indication that the Americans have attempted to manipulate the case in Sweden that it's...
They don't need to. We have some indications. The ambassador for the UK, Julian Assange, said beginning of 2011 they were waiting until after the Swedish case. The independent...
Waiting for what?
What's the US interest in this situation? It's not for my expedition.
No,
he didn't say that, but it's obvious.
So the US ambassador to the UK said early
2011.
Right. That they will...
the US was waiting to see what happened with the Swedish case.
They wouldn't file at the same time because then there'd be two competing extraditions.
Oh, I see.
And so they were waiting till...
I got it.
They would...
There'd be one in the queue, and then the other one would come in, and then it would require the Home Secretary to make a decision, a reviewable court decision. There's no politically reviewable decision to swap the precedent for these.
So what they would do is if they're going to actually, if Julian had won a non-extradition, they would have likely, at that point in the UK court, filed their extradition.
Or they wait to go to Sweden.
Yeah.
So that's what the ambassador said. And then also the Independent's diplomatic correspondent said in late 2010 that there were already informal talks between Sweden and the US.
The day after you went into prison.
Yeah.
Informal talks between Sweden and the US, so you extradite you to Sweden, and then...
And the details were that, I think in that, he said it was in conclusion. Beyond conclusion of the Swedish case. And then for the US, where I think the political equation is most interesting. You have prosecutors in the Manning case that are clearly gearing up for the 12-week Broadway musical.
Yeah.
And where they have their star diva, which is the Navy SEAL guy.
Yeah.
So they've got to make him sing. And it's such a big machine, 141 prosecution witnesses that they're listed. And the grand jury investigation has been such a big machine. And so many people, so many reports, all sorts of court cases about it. That have spun off from it. Epic has a court case in relation to FOIs, which has brought out a lot of interesting information, by the way, about...
Do you know Epic at all?
No.
It's Washington-based NGO, the Electronic Privacy Information Center. Sort of like ACLU for privacy. And so they asked for all FBI and DOJ records about lists of WikiLeaks supporters. They're making an attack under the associative rights.
The First Amendment of Right of Association.
Yeah, there was interference with the potential interference with associative rights. But anyway, in litigating that case, the way that the FBI and DOJ is defending it, saying we have these classes of documents, we can't do how many documents in each class, and they're from certain sections, like the section of the DOJ that has to do with expedition. Interesting picture. Anyway, you can see that there's a really very big machine. There's been over a dozen different US departments significantly involved. That machine is now quite hard to stop insofar as there's budgets really predefined. For example, there was a tender put out by the DOJ about a year ago for a case management computer system for the WikiLeaks case. The tender was $1 to $2 million for that computer system, just all documents. There's all sorts of career interest from prosecutors, FBI, etc., in keeping that big thing going. They want to, score. Now, at the level of the senior generals, Eric Holder, actually let's just go down one. Neil McBride, the DA for Massachusetts, has become...
No, Neil McBride is just, he's the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia.
Sorry, continue on Massachusetts.
He's the head U.S. Attorney guy.
He's the guy who's responsible for national security prosecutions. And in particular, most of the US's extraterritorial prosecutions. There was a hagiographic article appeared in the Washington Post about him maybe 4 months ago. It's really worth reading to understand the geopolitical aspect of the legal part of the case, which I sort of hadn't realised before, but there's a lawfare thing going on with US law to apply US law to as many jurisdictions as possible. And if you have control over use of force in a foreign jurisdiction, it's your jurisdiction. It's part of your state by definition. So he's involved with this project to push to encompass as many states as possible under US law and to bring them back. That article says there's 60-something territories they're pulling people in and prosecuting them in Alexandria, Virginia. He's also handling the Kim.com case. So there's a question as to whether there's a sealed indictment already. If there is a sealed indictment, we believe based on the lots of evidence, both through leaks, but particularly based on the behaviour of the DOJ and Neil McBride in answering questions, that there is a sealed indictment.
What does that mean in terms of
that there is an indictment,
right?
But
and they won't give public notice of it.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, because in this case, the person is. Yeah, it's normal. If a person's outside the country, if they
hasn't been arrested yet.
Right. They don't want to telegraph to that person, you've been indicted.
If the person hasn't been arrested yet, it's normal. Right. The indictment is sealed. Then by law, it is a criminal offence for any US official aware of the sealed indictment to tell any person, even another US official, of the existence of the sealed indictment, except in the course of executing the warrant.
And can you tell me if there have been any public indications that seem to hint that there is a sealed indictment?
Under their own rule procedure, if you ask, are you a subject, target, or witness for a grand jury inquiry, they're meant to tell you. They refuse to do so.
You can't go to court on it, but their guidelines say...
So if you were to ask,
yes,
if you were a subject, target, or witness for a grand jury, they would have to tell you.
They are meant to. The guidelines are. The prosecutorial guidelines are that they should tell you.
Okay, right.
They refuse to engage with the question at all.
You pose the question then?
Yeah, we pose the question. They refuse to engage.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's very suspicious behavior.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But when you say, who should we speak to about it? They go, that guy. There's a guy.
That's interesting.
That is responsible for answering that question.
Right.
He refuses to touch it. Why? The easiest explanation is because he would be in breach of law that says you can't.
Do you have any sense as to when that sealed indictment might have come down?
There's a leak from Stratfor where it's an internal mail from Stratfor, which is please don't publish. There is a sealed indictment against Assange.
Oh, right, I remember that.
Yeah, the Vice President.
I remember that. That's
he used to work at the Diplomatic Security Service. So
right, that's interesting. Yeah.
On the other hand, he's a guy who is a bit fast and loose with rumors. So
do you have any sense of when it might have happened, if there was?
Well, that email was from 2011. 2011. Someone has said that maybe that they had made an indictment and they were just all ready because I won the case here, the extradition case, and they needed to move quickly. Or it's possible that this was a draft indictment. They have always a draft indictment ready to go in case they need it. So maybe the draft indictment was ready, always to go, and they didn't file it later on. But what's quite suspicious is that for sure they have said publicly the investigation is ongoing, that they refuse to follow their procedure and confirm my status, which would be natural if there was a sealed indictment.
Was there anything in the Manning's statement that struck you in particular, surprised you, or
everything?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that has to be my answer.
We were there, and it was so moving. Oh my God, it was so moving. It was just broke your heart. It was really
incredible.
Yeah, it really was. And he was so poised.
That was remarkable.
It was really remarkable. Articulate.
I thought the mainstream review was like, well, I have different phrases for this beast. I think this week on the old media. The old media portrayal of him was to remove any heroic qualities from him. And a heroic quality is deciding to do something.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being an unconscious, unreasoned expression of madness or sexual frustration or whatever. And no one can follow it. You can't follow in anyone's footsteps unless the person you're following has made choices. And you might be able, if they've made choices and they've done certain things, then you might be able to choose also to do that. But if you've done things because you're a mad homosexual, no one can choose to be a mad homosexual. So they stripped him of they attempted to strip him of all his refinements.
You know, I know exactly.
You could say, look, here's a rare event. Why does a rare event happen? Well, what do we know? Most people weren't able to do this. Let's say whoever this person was. If the argument is that it's Bradley Manning, what do we know about Bradley Manning? We know that he won 3 science fairs awards. We know the guy is bright. We know that he was interested in politics early on. He was very articulate and outspoken and didn't like lies. And we know that he was interested in the state of the world. And we know that he was skilled at his job of being an intelligence analyst. So these things suggest that if you're going to say what for the combination of abilities and motivations that might cause an action, here are talents and virtues that could perceivably give rise to the phenomenon. But instead, people go, they look at all the homosexual, this is the answer. Well, 10% for the US military are homosexuals, at least 50% from broken homes. Okay, if you take those 2 factors together, that gets you down to, say, 5%. Explanatory power, there's 5 million people with active security clearances, so you're down to, what, 25? No, you're down to 250,000 people. You've got to get down from 250,000 to 1.
You know, the easy way to survive in the media is to adopt the dominant stereotype and run with it. And if you challenge the stereotype, I'm just speaking as somebody who's been inside that organization, you as a reporter are going to catch a lot of shit from your editors, but most importantly from the other reporters who peddle this crap. And so they were very skillfully created a kind of false persona, obviously completely false.
It's this East Coast. I think it's because like Freud got into the East Coast of the US and then they started working with the sons and daughters of rich people who were disturbed, and so then they became a status icon type of psychiatrist. I mean, how absurd is it? How absurd is it in the East Coast of the US, where to be a proper person, a proper successful person, as a woman you have to have a psychiatrist, and as a man you have to have a lawyer.